Today, we're looking at something pretty fundamental in music creation. Our source talks about this shift away from scoring notation, writing it all down first,
Right.
towards what they're calling scoring for sound.
Scoring for sound. Yeah, I like that phrase. It really captures it.
It suggests the whole process is kind of flipped on its head, doesn't it?
It really does. It's about what drives the creation. Is it the abstract idea on paper, or is it the sound itself, the raw material?
Yeah, exactly. This got me thinking, actually, when I was imagining creating a string quartet for a Brassai piece.
Oh, interesting.
Trying to get that 1930s Paris vibe, And immediately you're not thinking notes first, you're thinking sounds.
Absolutely. What does 1930s Paris sound like in that context?
Right. Like a smoky cafe, maybe a small jazz group, a rhythm guitar, piano.
Maybe some sax or a trumpet. You might even hear a concertina or an accordion in there.
Totally. And that made me realize how much the sonic palette, the actual sound, comes first now for many people. So that's our mission today, really, to kind of unpack what this means, this sound-first approach versus the old way, the notation way.
It's a big shift from the historical perspective. I mean, composition used to be almost inseparable from writing.
Yeah, the score was the work, in a sense.
Exactly. Composers, arrangers, that was their language. Notation. The sound came from the notation.
But now, the source argues technology's changed the game.
Big time.
Making it so, anybody can be a composer, might be a bit strong, but certainly anyone can manipulate sound directly.
Right. You can sculpt sounds without necessarily needing formal notation skills up front.
And notation, if it appears at all. Often it's like MIDI data.
Which is basically a recording of a performance turned into digital notes.
So it's like a record after the fact, not the blueprint before.
Precisely. Which leads to this concern the source raises about what they call the deracination of notation, especially regarding classical music.
Deracination, like uprooting.
Yeah, exactly. That deep historical tie between classical music and the written score, it seems to be weakening, losing its roots, maybe.
You think about how musicians used to engage with it, poring over these, big paper scores.
Oh, yeah. Turning the pages, following all the different lines. There's a physical connection there.
A tactile thing.
Yeah.
And now, maybe you scroll a PDF on a tablet.
If you see the score at all, it might just be an image online somewhere.
Right. And the source is saying this isn't just about convenience, is it?
No, it's deeper. The worry is that without that close engagement with the score, the understanding of the composer's detailed plan,
The structure, the dynamics.
all that stuff embedded in the notation, it could get lost. The sound becomes detached.
Detached from its origin story, almost.
Yeah. And then classical music risks just becoming another sound source.
Like fodder for samples.
Potentially, yeah. Used without maybe a full grasp of its context or its internal logic, it just becomes sonic texture.
And that makes you wonder about the future, doesn't it?
It does. Will people connect Stravinsky or Debussy with their actual scores in the same way?
Or learn the craft from studying them, if they're not as published or central.
If the focus shifts entirely away from notation study, yeah, what happens to that lineage, that transmission of knowledge?
It's a bit worrying. And you wonder if this is happening elsewhere, too, in other arts.
Is the immediate sensory hit becoming more important than the underlying structure or history?
Yeah, which ties into the next point from the source, this idea of isolation in music creation.
Oh, yes. Focusing in.
Like zeroing in on just one specific sound characteristic.
Right, that perfect fuzzy guitar tone.
Yeah.
Or a very particular reverb tail on a snare drum.
And the source suggests that where that sound came from, the original song, the artist, that becomes less important.
It's all about the sound itself, isolated from its context. Does it sound cool? Does it fit my track?
And the internet definitely fuels this.
Oh, absolutely. How many YouTube channels are dedicated to, reviewing one specific guitar pedal?
Or comparing tiny nuances between two amplifiers.
Endless deep dives into the micro details of sound production. It highlights that intense focus on the isolated sonic element.
So this sets up a tension, doesn't it? Between, traditional composition,
melody, chords, structure,
and this production-focused sound design creativity.
Yeah, the source actually mentions a personal preference, starting maybe with guitar, melody, chords first. The old school way, perhaps.
But acknowledges that maybe. Maybe that's becoming a bit outdated.
Or at least not the only way, or even the dominant way anymore.
The starting point is shifting for many.
It is, and the source even floats this interesting idea, maybe having an assistant, to kind of bring sound ideas, sonic options to the composer who's focused on the notes and structure.
Ah, I see. Like bridging the gap. because doing both well, composition and cutting-edge production, that's a huge ask for one person.
It really is. They're almost different skill sets, different mindsets sometimes.
And let's be honest, as the source points out, the sound quality matters hugely now.
Oh, yeah. Those guitar sounds, the overall production polish, it's often make or break for getting heard.
Which brings us back to sound as a starting point.
Right. The contemporary process where someone might literally start with a cool sound they found.
Like a loop from Splice, or some texture they made in software.
Exactly. And then they build outwards from that. The lyrics, the song structure,
Yeah.
it all grows around the initial sound.
It's a totally different workflow.
And the source has this interesting test, though. Can the finished piece, even if it started with sound design, still be boiled down?
Boiled down how?
Like, can you play the basic chords and melody on a piano or guitar, and does it still work as a song?
The campfire test, almost. Does it hold up structurally?
Kind of, yeah. It suggests a value in ensuring there's still a solid musical core, even if it wasn't the starting point.
That makes sense. Acknowledging the new ways, but still valuing that fundamental musicality.
Right. While starting with sound can lead to really new, exciting places, there's still this desire mentioned in the source to be able to, translate it back.
Back into something you could write down or play simply.
Yeah. Connecting the sonic exploration with that sort of underlying musical structure.
The big takeaway from our deep dive is really this profound shift.
Mm-hmm. From music born on paper.
To music increasingly born from sound itself. Sound is the primary material, the inspiration.
And that's got real consequences, doesn't it? Especially for music with a long history tied to notation, like classical.
Yeah, that link to the score, the composer's detailed blueprint, it feels like it's becoming more tenuous in this sound-first world.
It really does.
And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Does this change in music mirror wider trends? And how we create and consume information in art in general in the digital age.
Like focusing on fragments, on immediate experiences.
Maybe sometimes losing sight of the bigger structures, the historical depth, the context.
That's a really interesting thought to end on. Definitely something to chew on.